Welcome, Norse fans, to Norsin Around, part of the Grueling Truth Radio Network. As always, I'm James Ernest. With me, Alex Gray. Alex, tell us about the wild weekend up there in Indianapolis, especially since you experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, I had a front row seat. I was with the NKU pep band. Had a blast, really. It was a fun weekend we had. We tipped off at 9:40. Actually, a lot of stuff was going on in Indianapolis. There was a lot of St. Patrick's Day events going on, and, of course, the games. So it was just, it was crazy. But, no, I mean, I had a blast. The final score was 79-70 Kentucky over Northern Kentucky. But you got to give Northern Kentucky credit. They scared Kentucky in that game. They really scared them. Carson Williams had 21 points. Drew McDonald had 14 points. Levon Holland had 22 points. Cole Murray had 6 points, 2 for 9 from 3 points, three-pointer line. What I've noticed, the funny part is Williams, McDonald, and Holland, freshman, sophomore, freshman, and they play like you think they'd be juniors or seniors.
Yep.
Kentucky, they're Kentucky. They got the big recruits who are going pro and all that. But NKU just never quit. They were down, and, they came really close. And I always believed Northern Kentucky could beat Kentucky. The one issue they had in the game was missing the close-up shots. They missed a lot of close-up shots. And if they hadn't missed as much, I think they would have managed to slip by Kentucky. So, give credit to the Norse. They had, heck of a run, great season, and they're going to be back. They'll be back next year. They're going to be better.
Yeah, because like you've covered, they've got most of their players coming back. There's, I think, 1 or 2 seniors besides Cole Murray. Unfortunately, those ones didn't really have a huge impact on the scoreboard during game time. Obviously, they were an important part of the team. They pushed the other fellows to get better. So, we don't want to come off like going, oh, they aren't going to miss those guys. They're going to miss them. But, the stats, the scoreboards, the things where people actually see it, unfortunately, because they don't get the credit for what they do, the first thought is they won't be missed. But, of course, Cole Murray, who plays an intricate role, being one of our best shooters, that'll be obvious to the fans, but some of the other ones that unfortunately won't get the credit they deserve. But yeah, you're right. Northern's got a good chance of coming back even stronger next year, getting in some new recruits, that 7-footer. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Definitely. So we got some good stuff going on there. And like you said, he did miss some close shots that made it kind of rough. And, of course, Carson, on a national stage, he stepped up big time. As a freshman, the interesting thing with Carson is he's had some weeks, freshman of the week, I believe 5 or 6 times, probably going to be the freshman of the year. I don't know if they've announced that or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is.
I think he should. He was one of the best playing freshmen.
Yeah, so he should definitely be for the Horizon League. I don't know, how he will stand in all college basketball under the freshman category, but definitely in the Horizon League, I could see him winning that category. So got some good things there and all. But yeah, and they were, Calipari was impressed. He said a lot of great things in his post-game press conference. Like you had mentioned, just the fact that they didn't give up. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't saying that, they didn't give up, nice of them, they were trying. No, he said even that if a couple more of those threes would have fallen, he would have been concerned. And so that was, that. And, of course, he also said that the game started way too late and he was tired and he wanted to go to bed. But I ain't going to get in that, Or actually my favorite part was he goes and talks about, these guys are college students and, it's 1 in the morning. I don't, it's too late. They need to get to bed. I'm like thinking to myself, most college students are up to 3 or 4 in the morning, either from work, homework. Yeah, so it just seemed funny when Calipari said that. So.
Yeah, what's funny, my dad told me when, he was up at the game too. He was way up in the stands. And he told me he was leaving the arena. All the NKU fans were high-fiving each other. They were so happy. They were very proud. As I was playing the fight song at the end of the game, the NKU crowd, and boy, I tell you, excellent turnout by the NKU crowd. We performed at a pep rally. All sorts of people there, and they were at the game, of course, and they just applauded the team. On the scoreboard, Charles Barkley gave credit to NKU. The crowd went crazy. The NKU fans were just thrilled and happy. They didn't care what happened, and that's what's great about it, because I think this is the beginning of something for NKU. If I'm Kentucky and Louisville, watch out. I think NKU is going to be, quote, on the rise. But, yeah.
Very true, and you were right about, the fans sticking around, being excited, and that was one of the neat things Drew McDonald brought up in the press conference, was that it was him and I forget which other ones went back out there on the court, and he was going to go back out to thank the fans. But the funny thing is the fans kept yelling at him, thank you, even before he got a chance to, which I thought was neat because both of them, the fact that the player at his young age knows to appreciate the fans is just remarkable. I mean, it shows the maturity and the growth in that young man and the potential that he has, obviously, with being a sophomore. His next years, junior and senior year, are going to be huge at Northern. So, yeah. However, because I like to be pessimistic because it's fun, no, not really, but I do like to be pessimistic on it or realistic. Unfortunately, I could see something happening where in the next 2 years, 3 years, something like that, where, how the conference leaders, Valparaiso and Oakland, they should have made the tournament as well. And unfortunately, since they didn't win the postseason tournament, they got gypped out of going to the NCAA tournament. I could see something happening, same thing with Northern. They could end up having, a season where they have 5 losses, 6 losses, something like that. And then, unfortunately, trip up in the conference tournament. So, as much as I'm happy and excited about that and excited about the future, it just stinks because of how the conference is set up and how the March Madness is set up that they hold some of that stuff against them. And it wasn't like those teams didn't play big names. Valpo played UK this season.
Yeah, Valpo and Cleveland State, I believe, both played Kentucky, correct?
Exactly. And then I think Oakland played like West Virginia like we did. And they played somebody similar to that. So it wasn't like our conference, is not trying to play big games outside of, the conference schedule to build our RPI rankings. Unfortunately, there are a lot of places that don't want to play NKU, that don't want to play Oakland, that don't want to play Valparaiso because they know they are damn good programs. That's the thing. So, I know that's going to be an issue that's going to come up in the future. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully, this ain't one of those ones where I'm like, oh, remember that at the end of the season recap we did? Remember when I brought that up? Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I am, like I said, I'm on the pessimistic side. I mean, I'm very happy with what they did, during the game and all. I mean, obviously they definitely showed that they deserved to be there, and they showed that they would have probably beat, a good majority of the teams that were in the tournament. Unfortunately, you go up against the number 2 seed, it's a little tougher. But, yeah, they just need to keep doing what they're doing and scheduling those out-of-conference games. And, of course, one of the things I think is going to help them is the fact that hopefully UC, because they're visiting us in our stadium next year, will then maybe set up a home and home. Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I think the UC exposure, I think, will help NKU out. And the whole Horizon League thing, I mean, you're only going to get the conference champion out of there. And, of course, there's always that, your team can get good for a few years and suddenly your coach may end up, offered a bigger deal at a bigger school. That happens to every single mid-major school out there, Ask the MAC school, ask all those conferences,
Very true. And not even just, like the mid-majors like we're in. I mean, UC in football has to deal with that all the time. So, I know what you mean. Same with, like, if they end up doing well in football this year, a year or two from now, you never know. People might be running out the door. So, but I don't think that's the case with NKU's coach because he does have the local ties. I feel he is going to stick around for a while. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's not going to return or can't turn down the jobs for years and years. But I think he, kind of like how at Butler's Brad Stevens, turned down the jobs for a couple of years there as the program was built. And then once he got it built and he felt like they, did what they could do, then, when he got that big offer, and of course Brad got offered the NBA, shoot, if our coach gets offered, going back to Bama, it'd be hard to say no.
Yeah, and what the funny thing was, after that game, the pep band actually stood outside of our hotel and waited for the team to get back. And 1:30 in the morning, we were playing our fight song as they drove in, and the coach very much appreciated us and all the support. And I like Coach Brandon. I think he's a great coach, and I think he'll lead this program to successful times ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, because, you're right. He comes off as a really nice guy, really knowledgeable about the game, and just really respectful, which is great. Because I'm not going to lie to you, when they first said that the previous coach had lost his position, I was a little upset because it wasn't he didn't do anything wrong. It's not that he didn't do anything, So that was the part that I kind of was resentful at first because I'm like, wow, he did his best. That first 4 years you couldn't really recruit because, well, what are you going to offer him? Like, yeah, no matter what you do, we're not going to postseason. Even if you come out and go undefeated, the next 4 years, not that was going to happen, but even if you did, it doesn't matter because we're not eligible for anything. So it's a little tougher to get the recruits. Obviously, with exposure, next year's, as good as this year's recruiting class is with the 7-footer, next year's is probably going to even, of course, this, season with the freshmen as well, the Mr. Kentucky's and all, it's just going to keep getting better because the more exposure you got, the better recruits you get. The better recruits you get, the more exposure. So it's, that kind of circle of life with the Lion King going on there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there are just some of those, 11 seeds, which then again, Xavier has fortunately shown us that 11 seeds aren't all bad. Because usually that's where they kind of stick the bigger name conference teams that, weren't just, they were kind of like in the bubble of getting in the tournament. Obviously that's why they do the 11 seeds as the playing games. Like USC and obviously USC has shown that they deserve to be in the tournament. And who else? Rhode Island. Rhode Island was. So it would have been tough picking out who shouldn't have been in. But, yeah, going back to that, beating the dead horse, even though, during the regular season we'll be rooting against them, Valpo and Oakland and Green Bay, all, have pretty strong arguments.
Definitely.
Yeah. Same thing with, Kansas State and all. They all did a really good job in the tournament, so it's hard to say which one shouldn't have been in. But, Northern, like we've said, is got a bright future. Looking forward to following them, maybe setting up some interviews with coaches and players before the season next year. But, obviously we got a little bit of a ways before that starts back up again. So any thoughts, to wrap up the season?
I just want to congratulate the men's basketball team on an incredible season. Very historic, something that entire team will cherish the rest of their lives, is knowing that they were the first ever group of players to take NKU to March Madness, to the big dance. The pep band was the first NKU pep band to be there to support the team, and it'll be a weekend that I'll remember for the rest of my life for sure. I had all sorts of people come up to us, like, oh, you guys are in the NKU pep band? We had Louisville fans cheering for us. We had Dayton fans telling us to kick their butt, because, they were up there too in Indianapolis as well as us in Kentucky. And
let's be honest on that, though. And it would be nice to think that they were rooting for us. There's a lot of that where Louisville and Dayton were rooting against UK because those guys don't like UK. No, I like to think positively that they were rooting for us, but I think there was a lot of basically anybody else besides UK's fans were rooting against UK. When Victor did his dance, and then Victor did a pretty good dance, but the place went crazy. Over his little dance around and stuff. for those who weren't at the games, because I don't think they show this on TV, in between each game or some point during the game, they do the mascot dance-off. And Victor, the pop that he got, you would have swore he was Hulk Hogan or the Road Warriors in their prime. I mean, the fans just went crazy. And
nobody knew who he was until this tournament.
Yeah. Well, actually, people did know about Victor. Now, they didn't know about his dancing, but a lot of people have known about Victor for a while now. And I base that on the fact that Victor was voted one of the 10 scariest mascots last year. So the funny part is he gets voted one of the 10 scariest mascots last season. So Northern overreacts. They buy a new head. They buy a new body. And but then they get some pushback on the head and the new body. So they end up voting, and they keep the old head, but then they use the new body because the new body isn't as muscular, so he's not as scary. So and then he goes from that to being voted one of the best mascots. I want to say ESPN again, but there might have been someone else. Someone ended up voting him as one of the best mascots this year. So it's just funny that he goes from the two extremes. But, yeah, he's starting to get out there. Basically, any of the mascots in the state of Kentucky are doing quite well because, of course, as we all know, the Hilltopper or Grimace or whatever that red blob thing that works for Western, he's also done quite well with his Capital One commercials. So I'm hoping, that Victor, you never know, we might start seeing him in Capital One commercials.
Yeah, I hope I could see Victory Viking in a commercial. That'd be pretty awesome. Just see my represent on national television like that.
Exactly. That's huge. Exactly. I mean, that has helped with Western success, being able to recruit, being able to get those donations, because that's actually, one of the most important parts about the athletic program or any athletic program is by making the alumni happy, by winning, they're more likely to open up their checkbooks. They're more likely to donate. They're more likely to pay attention to the school. Because a lot of people go, oh, athletics is just for the people that like sports. Athletics gives the school pride and it gives it notoriety. Now, don't get me wrong, people should be more interested in the academic aspect of it. And, if somebody from your school finds a cure for whatever, then they should be, praising that just as much, if not more. But unfortunately, how our society's set up, us getting in the tournament probably made Northern a bunch more money this year. Not just the athletic program, but also made the university itself, because you've got alumni that will go, yeah, you know what, I'm actually, I'm proud to say I'm a Northerner. I'm going to send that check this year, that kind of thing. So it really does all add up.
Yeah.
So like we were saying, that covers, of course, this season. Obviously, if there's any stuff going on this summer, any new recruits, any transfers, hopefully that doesn't happen again, like the one player who's got to be kicking himself for going up to Ball State, thinking he was going to go to a better setting. That didn't work well for him. But, shoot. So let's switch things over to the women's, because we kind of did finish them up last week, but we're going to, give them another little bit this week. Because we are looking forward to next season for them. We're looking forward to their new recruits. We're going to miss the seniors that they've had this year, and they play an important role, just like the men, who were able to improve, the culture of Northern sports. They also played an important role. They might not have been as successful on the court, but off the court, big impact in the community. I know most of them do a lot of voluntary work, a lot of charity work, and give back to Northern's culture. So, of course, they deserve just as much credit, even if they weren't successful on the scoreboard. They were successful in other ways.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take the time to mention that. And then, Alex, tell us what the baseball team's been up to.
Some good news actually came out of the baseball team. Jake Richmond has been named the Horizon League Batter of the Week, the redshirt junior infielder. He hit .500 batting average with 6 RBIs, 2 home runs, and 4 runs scored in a 3-game sweep of Milwaukee that opened up Horizon League play this past weekend. The Cincinnati native was 7 for 14 at the plate and posted a .929 slugging percentage and a .533 on-base percentage. He was also 2 for 2 in stolen bases, and he never struck out. He had an incredible weekend as the Norse had a series opening victory on Saturday, 13-9, and had a win on Sunday. Scored. I'm getting ahead of myself. He went 2 for 4 in that game. He batted a combined 5 for 10 with 2 home runs, 5 RBI, and 3 runs scored in a doubleheader on Sunday. In the series finale, Richmond was 3 for 5 with 3 RBI and a home run. He drove in the game-winning run on an RBI single with 2 outs in the 8th inning for a 6-5 victory.
And that actually ended up working out the right way, because with the weather being the way it was on Friday, I mean, you remember it was quite cold in the morning. Wouldn't have been a good day for baseball, so it was good they pushed that back to Sunday, did the doubleheader, and it was nice to see them win the doubleheader. I mean, they've had a tough go to start with, but yeah, when you have players that are batting .500 like that, and getting the stolen bases and all, getting on base, you're going to get some good stuff going. And of course, and we need to look up the stats on this, but Northern does have that former pitcher that's currently with the Cubs. He's in the World's Baseball Championships. I ain't going to lie to you. The problem with the Baseball World Championships is when it is, because it's competing against March Madness, no one ever pays attention to it. It's one of those things, every time I'm like, yeah, I'm going to really focus on it this year. I'm going to pay attention to it. And then I totally end up forgetting all about it until, we're talking about baseball. Yeah, because it's one of those things that unfortunately, USA, we haven't really done well in it. So, as our culture works, if we're not going to win it, we don't really care. So,
yeah.
But those guys do a great job. They represent our country. They, do the best they can. So, and we don't always get the best American players to play in it, but, if the best players don't want to play in it, we rather have the people that want to represent our country instead of trying to, bribe superstars into playing in the dang thing. So I'm glad that Northern does have a representative in there. And then, of course, switching to softball, and then we'll sign off. We're going to put the post-game press conference from the tournament on Friday after the show. So, stick around after the show and definitely listen to that. Hopefully we're going to have both Calipari talking about Northern and, of course, Northern talking about Northern. So, Alex, what about softball?
All right, so they played in the SIUE tournament in Edwardsville, Illinois. They did pick up a couple wins on a doubleheader on Saturday, March 18th, beating Butler 5-1 and Toledo 4-2. And then on Sunday, they lost to SIU Edwardsville 8-0 in 6, and then they lost to Ball State 3-0. And on Wednesday, they'll host a doubleheader against Miami University of Ohio.
Yeah. Now, when we say a double, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, it does say double. I was thinking it was one of those ones where you play 2 different teams. That is the craziest stuff. Have you seen that? Where, you play the one team and then you play a different team and you're like, wow, that's got to be unfair for the team that just played. And I've seen that happen once or twice. But, yeah, so you got the Miami of Ohio with the doubleheader, and then, of course, you got the Valparaiso with the doubleheader. They actually got a decent number of those scattered throughout the season. Oakland's already got one factored in. So instead of, which actually is probably a good thing that they have them set up that way with the Saturdays, because if something happens on Saturday, they can always push it back to Sunday. So, it's good that they have options. But, yeah, like we said, with this whole show, it's been about the Norsemen and just how great they've done this season, how well they've represented the school, and just how excited we are about the future. And that the nice thing is, when you go up to Northern's campus, in the next year or next years, unfortunately when I was there back from 98 to 06, just a couple of years, when I was there back in the day, unfortunately you saw too much blue, you saw too much red on campus. But with Northern doing things like this, I feel there's going to be a lot of gold on campus, which is really nice.
Identity now.
Yeah, that just makes you happy. There's a lot of Adidas gold as opposed to, like I said, back in the day, you saw the blues, you saw the, either the light blue or the dark blue, you saw the reds, you saw the, all that kind of stuff. So it just makes you proud that Northern is going to start embracing itself.
NKU has definitely put themselves on the NCAA map.
Very true. So for Alex Gray and James Ernest, signing off for the Grueling Truth Radio Network, as always, we appreciate your support, and stick around and listen to the press conferences, which will be right after this.